Today I'm putting the flavors of a Vietnamese banh mi sandwich into a macaroni salad to help you bring something unique to your barbecue. Boil 1 pound of elbow macaroni until they're very tender and plump. For other dishes, this would be considered overcooked, but for macaroni salad, it's perfect. Drain and transfer to a large bowl. Add 1/3 of a cup of apple cider vinegar, stir and set aside to cool. Next, we'll make some simple pickled vegetables with 3/4 of a cup of shredded carrots, 3/4 of a cup of thinly sliced cucumber, and 1/2 a cup of daikon radish. Or if you can't find daikon, you could substitute red radish, jicama, or even parsnip. Toss these veggies with 2 tablespoons of rice wine vinegar, 2 tablespoons of sugar, and 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. Freeze a pork tenderloin for 15 minutes so that it can be sliced easily. I'm using 3/4 of a pound here. Then slice it as thinly as you can. Marinate the sliced pork in 3 tablespoons of hoisin sauce, 3 tablespoons of rice wine vinegar, 2 garlic cloves minced, and 2 tablespoons of fish sauce for 15 minutes. Then cook the pork on a hot cast iron skillet. It shouldn't take more than 5 minutes total to cook through and get a nice sear. Set aside the pork to cool to room temperature. For the dressing, combine 1½ cups of mayo, 1/2 cup of sour cream, 1/2 cup of whole milk, the juice of 1 lime, 1 tablespoon Dijon mustard, 1 tablespoon sriracha, 1 tablespoon hoisin sauce, 1 teaspoon fish sauce, and 3/4 of a teaspoon garlic powder. Stick this in the fridge if your pork is still cooling down. When the pork is cool, add the dressing to the macaroni and mix well. Then add the pickled veggies, drained, the pork cut into bite-sized pieces, 2 jalapenos diced with the seeds removed, 1/2 a cup of fresh cilantro, and 3 scallions sliced. Give it a taste, then season as needed with salt and pepper. Let this chill in the refrigerator for at least an hour before serving so the flavors can come together. What relevance does the doctrine of the Trinity have for our relationships, our communities, or our politics? These questions have been asked often by theologians in the last several decades, and there are particular reasons why these sorts of questions are resonant. The Trinitarian confession of God as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is at the core of the Christian faith. Any of the classic liturgies resoundingly proclaim this truth. But the concept of the Trinity is a little bit elusive for most of us. We have trouble explaining what it means exactly that God is 3 in 1. And I would guess that many of our explanations eventually end up with us throwing up our hands and declaring it a mystery. This combination that we know the Trinity is important, but we don't quite have a great understanding of it, makes its application to human relationships and politics all the more enticing. In what I'm sharing here today, I'm building on some of the essays I read recently in the book Advancing Trinitarian Theology, edited by Oliver Crisp and Fred Sanders. Check out the link in the description if you want a deep dive into some of the hot topics around Trinitarian theology. Because theological terms like perichoresis, which describes the relationship between the 3 persons of the Trinity, are a bit paradoxical and difficult to grasp, it's easy for us to import our own understandings of ideal relationships onto the Trinity. Then we take that understanding of relationships that we've attached to the Trinity and we make it the template for ideal human relationships. And I think this is a subtle process that most of us don't even realize that we're engaging in when we do it. But it's a temptation because we know the Trinity is so important and we want it to have some sort of practical application. And that desire that the rubber would meet the road with our theology of the Trinity isn't without merit. Our doctrine of the Trinity should shape our families, our churches, and our communities. So how do we get there? First, we should be careful about making direct parallels between the life of the Trinity and human relationships. Because the life of God is X, we should be X. In some sense, our understanding of the divine life will always escape our grasp because we're not God. But Jesus does pray in John 17 that we would be one just as He and the Father are one, and we should take time to reflect on what that means. Rather than building out a model of what the divine life is like as 3 in 1 and then applying that to humanity, we should instead reflect on the ways that Father, Son, and Spirit are already at work among us. We've been baptized into Christ and clothed ourselves with Christ. We're already being drawn into and shaped by the divine life of self-giving love. And yet we're also in a process of growing into Christ, a process that won't come to its completion until he returns. We need to recognize and hold in tension our present participation in the life of the Trinity and our future hope for union with God in the eschaton. There's obviously much more to be said about this. If you want to continue learning about the Trinity, check out this playlist and enjoy the macaroni salad.